Welcome, everybody, to your free GMAT prep hour. It is November 7th, 2024. My name is Reed Arnold. I will be your host through the wonderful world of the GMAT this evening. If you are here live, glad to have you. If you're watching a recording on YouTube, glad to have you as well. If you're looking for more free prep options, it should be known we have a lot of them out there, and I would encourage you to make use of them. We have our live GMAT classes. They're starting every week, it seems. And you are allowed, and I encourage you to take the first class of any of those classes for free. You can take it as a trial student. And even if you have no intention of signing up for the course, I think you should go to this class because we talk about some really important stuff in class one. It's a free class for you. You basically get 10% of the class, no charge. Might as well do that. Check our schedule for upcoming classes and attend, pick up some big stuff there. You can do a similar thing with our interactive on-demand course. That's our self-paced study. You can get a sample of that, get the first few lessons. Again, it's free. You might as well take advantage of that. We also have two foundations of math two foundations of GMAT math running at this time. Typically, we do one of each a month, although every now and then, I think in December, we're going to do two of each. One of those is the foundations of math variables. One of those is the foundations of math computations. You do not have to take them in any order. They do communicate with each other, but they stand alone. And I would encourage you, whether you're just starting your studying, or even if you've been studying for months or even years, you might pick up something from those classes. When I actually learned to teach those classes, I picked up some tricks that changed how I do GMAT math. And so I encourage pretty much anyone to take some time to attend those sessions. You also get a recording of those sessions that you can watch at any time at your convenience. So there's a lot of free stuff out there. And then, of course, there are the free prep hours. We have a whole library of these on YouTube. Again, if you're watching this recording, you've probably found that library. But at this point, that library is so extensive. It's more information than we fit in our courses. It's just so thorough. Me and the other teachers who teach these classes are always texting each other like, what else are we going to talk about? We've really covered so much of the big important stuff and some of the less important stuff, right? It seems like the things that we haven't covered yet are like the really niche topics that sometimes maybe show up. But boy, when it comes to getting a great score, we've kind of said so much that needs to be said. So you can make a full curriculum out of the free GMAT prep hours, and I would love for you to do so. Tonight, we are wrapping up our series, How an Expert Handles. If you've seen the other videos, the other recordings of these, I have basically taken the questions that you get. Every person who takes the GMATs gets a bucket of questions for free from the official test makers. And I have taken those questions and shown how someone who has done way too much GMAT in my life, would handle them. I've done problem solving for math. I've done data sufficiency. I've done reading comp. I've done critical reasoning. I've done graphs and tables. I've done the two-part logic questions. The only question type I have left are the multi-source reasoning questions. And so that's what we're here to see tonight. I'm going to do the sample multi-source reasoning questions that you get with your sign up when you sign up for the GMAT and show you how I handle them. Has been seen in other versions of this lesson, I might miss questions. I will certainly struggle with questions. That's kind of part of the game, and that's part of the fun. So I'm not going in here expecting perfection. I'm just showing you that this is what it looks like when someone who's done a lot of GMAT does these problems. Okay. Here is just a quick look at the data insights sections and the question types you see in the data insights. Today we're on multi-source reasoning. I'm not going to keep a clock because so much of this is me kind of stopping and talking about what I'm thinking in the question. But I will still be somewhat cognizant of time. And if I'm realizing that a question is tough and I'm kind of stuck on it, and it's taking a lot of time, I will say that, like, okay, I guess got to guess and move on, because that's an important skill to have for this test. You're going to have to guess and move on sometimes. And so if that happens, I'm going to just show you that that's what I would do. The general time you do have for a multi-source reasoning question is 2 minutes per question. And then but that's after a minute and a half or so up front, getting your head around what the sources are that they have given you. So for a multi-source passage and 3 questions, which is usually what you'll see, you'll have basically 7.5, 8 minutes to get through that portion of the test. Just a few things up front, some general tips about multi-source reasoning. Um, I would say this is along with reading comp, but it seems this might even be more than reading comp, right? This can be an informational onslaught. Uh, you can really get a lot thrown at you. So don't think you need to understand every little piece before answering questions. Get a general sense of the material up front. Um, and then use the questions as fence posts. Okay, use what they ask about the passages to tell you where to look in the passages. In fact, when I took the last time I took an official GMAT test, this is just so much like the GMAT, frankly, I was baffled by my multi-source reasoning question. I never fully had my head around it. It was very difficult. I don't remember the exact content, but it almost feels like, if I remember right, that the information in the sources intentionally conflicted with each other. Like it wasn't telling a coherent story in a very confusing way. And I never fully got it. I never fully understood everything. Um, but I still, if I remember right, I don't think I missed a question because I was just like, okay, I don't know. I get a general sense of what this is barely. And then I use the questions and I use the questions to point me to where in the passage to get the information I needed to answer that question. And if I remember right, I basically ignored huge chunks of the sources. You do not need to use every single piece in these question types. There's often just too much information. A lot of the skill is finding where to look and what information to use. Um, yeah, I mean I think honestly that's my big advice for multi-source reasoning is don't try to understand everything, get a general sense up front, know where information roughly is, and then use the questions to guide you through through the portions of the passage you need to look to answer whatever questions are asked. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to do. Um, Here is the official guide starter kit. I am going to do data insights, multi-source reasoning questions. Looks like we have 6 of these, 4 easy and 2 mediums. And I'm going to do unlimited time because again, I'm going to be talking as I do this, just letting you know where I got information or where I learned information or make connections to other things that I know about this test. And I'm just gonna do study mode. So let's just get this party started. Okay, so here we go. I have 3 tabs. Okay, it's 3 tabs. I have 3 uh, yes, no statements. This is the most common, well, there's this or just 5 answer choices, but this is a very common question type for multi-source reasoning. For such questions, you have to get all 3 of these correct in order to get credit. There's no partial credit, so do note that. I'm going to get a sense of what these 3 tabs tell me. I'm not going to read aloud, but I'll tell you kind of where I'm noticing things as I read. Okay. Okay, so we're analyzing artifacts using techniques. So I'm about to describe these techniques. And it's a museum that does this. Okay, so it's all but one of which is performed by an outside laboratory. So the other 2 are performed. So one is performed by the museum. Okay. So it seems to be just upfront. I'm just going to tell you what I'm noticing up front. So we're talking about techniques used to learn about an object's creation. And it seems like that's going to be determined by the material. We use only one technique depending on the type of material that the object was made out of, I presume. And so sure enough, here we have the 3 types of material. And honestly, I don't even know if I want to read these right now. I don't think I'm going to. Like this museum performs isotope ratio mass spectrometry. I'll come to that if I need it. I just want to get that these are the 3 materials and the 3 techniques based on those materials, or excuse me. Well, now I'm wondering why there are 4 techniques. Did I just assume there are 3? I guess I assumed there were 3. There are 4 techniques. Great. So there's 4 techniques, 4 materials, and 4 techniques based on those materials to learn something about the object's creation. I don't want to know any more than that right now. Okay. So I'm actually going to do this. Let's actually set up a notepad. I should have done this beforehand. Forgive me. Well, let's just put a little place over here as if I were taking notes on my notepad. Okay. Let's actually make this a little bit smaller. That's fine. Okay. So page 1, I'm going to say is the 4 materials plus techniques. And I'm going to say only 1 used by museum, 4 or 3 by outside labs. And those, just going to remind us of what those were. So we have teeth and bones. We have ores or alloys, plant matter, and we have clay. Okay. So that's page 1. Page 2, artifacts. Okay. So we have some artifacts, and they're metal, clay, stone, and bone, and wood on Caxna. Okay. We don't know if they were created on Caxna, and I'm noticing there's this like 2-year limit on the wood. I'm just going to put 2-year to remind myself of this. Right? Basically, it says that these wooden artifacts were made 2 years after the tree was cut down. I don't know why that's useful, but it just seems like a very specific detail, so I'm going to note it. And then there's something about radiocarbon accuracy is plus or minus 200, and TL dating is plus or minus 100. So I'm starting to sense that like, okay, we're going to be trying to figure out something about how old these artifacts are, perhaps. Okay, budget. Now I have a budget. Page 2. Okay. I don't want to worry too much about this. I'm just going to this is just budget. If I need to know something about the budget, I'll look here. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the questions, and again, I'm going to really use these to point me in the right direction for where I want to spend my time. For each of the following artifacts, select yes if, based on the museum's assumptions, a range of dates for the object's creation can be obtained using one of the techniques. Otherwise, select no. Okay. So can we obtain a range of dates for when this object was created? So a bronze deer. Can we figure out when this bronze deer was created? Well, that is a metallic ore. And for metallic ores, we use ICP-MS. And hmm. And that so that determines the ratio of metallic isotopes, which is according to where the sample was obtained. So I'm going to say that no. This seems to be more about a location than it is about age. right? The questions are about age. I don't think I can say when an age was made. The fired clay pot. So the clay objects use this TL dating, the time since the, yeah, so we can say since the, so TL is a dating. Seems like we can do that. We know that within 100 years, so we can get that range. And a wooden statue, I think we can get that as well, because that's plant matter. And so I'm going to say we can get that as well. So I'm going to say no, yes, yes. Okay, cool. So that was correct. We're going to have multiple questions per passage on these. It's rarely just one and done. It's going to be at least three. Well, I'm going to say at least two, usually three, and occasionally four. For each of the following, select yes if the result confirms the artifact was created during the time of the Caxna Kingdom. Okay, so again, this is something I didn't pay attention to on the first pass, but oh, I didn't mean to click that. I'm going to click this. So the Caxna Kingdom is from 1280 to 850 BC, 1250 to 850 BC. And so I want to know if the results of a test confirm that this thing was created during that time. Okay, so bone necklaces shown by RMS to have element ratios characteristics of artifacts known to be from the Caxna Kingdom. Bone necklaces. So what do we learn about bones? Ratio of chemicals, animals' diet. So that doesn't tell me timing. So no, I don't know anything about timing there. That tells me, again, the bone test talks about diet and minerals, not time. So I can't say that this was made in the time of the kingdom. The clay dated to 1050 by TL dating. Okay, well, TL dating is within 100 years. So if it's dated to 1050, that means it's between 1150 and 950, and that is in this range. So I'm going to say that yes, that fits the range. A copper box showing to have the same ratio of trace metals found in the copper mines. Okay, so this is again, this is that thing that I saw in the first question that I don't think has to do with time. It has to do with location. And so I'm going to say no, I can't say that this happened, this was made in the time period of this kingdom. No, yes, no, good. Okay. And again, a third question on this topic. For each of the following combinations of Caxna artifacts, select yes if, based on the information provided, the cost of all pertinent techniques can be shown to be within the museum's first-year budget. Otherwise, select no. Okay, so basically, can we afford, and I believe it's a $7,000 budget, right? So 4 TL tests and 15 radiocarbon tests, or 40 ICP-MS tests. Okay, so I can figure out, I can do a little bit of math here if I need to figure out how much one of these tests costs. So can we do 2 fired clay statues and 10 bronze statues in my $7,000? Well, the test I do with clay is TL dating, and TL is basically if I do 2, so here's a moment to use some GMAT math skills, right? Basically I want to do 2 TL tests on these 2 clay statues. Well, the simplest way to think about this math then is that that's $3,500 because 2 out of 4 is half of, instead of like doing 7,000 divided by 4 and then multiplying by 2, let's just save that and say, okay, for my clay statues, I'm going to say that's $3,500 for those TL tests. And for the radiocarbon tests, or for the bronze statues, I'm going to use ICP-MS, and that's a fourth of 7,000. And so again, I know I can afford this. I'm not going to do the math, but notice what I've had to do here is say, okay, I have basically 2 TL tests, and so that's half of 7,000. And then 10, let me get some green here. Then I'm going to do 10 of tests with these. Well, 10 of those tests is a fourth of those tests. And so if 40 costs 7,000, a fourth of 40 will cost a fourth of 7,000. And I know that half of 7,000 plus a fourth of 7,000 is less than 7,000. Notice I'm doing what is we call quantitative reasoning. So I can afford these tests. And I know this is I'm in order to explain this is taking a long time, right? But if you have done this a lot, you do this quickly. You can say like, okay, 2 out of 4 is half of this, 10 out of 40 is a fourth of this. And so that's 3/4 of 7,000. I can definitely afford that because 3/4 is less than one. So I know that that first question, I can afford those tests. Can I do 3 fire clay statues and 5 tin implements? So, okay, fire clay, again, that's going to be 3/4 of 7,000 because clay is going to be the TL tests. Tin is, I think, it's a metal, right? Metal alloy. Okay, so 5 tin is 5 out of 40, so that's plus 1/8. And that is also affordable because 3/4 plus 1/8 is less than 1. So that's basically 6/8 of 7,000 plus 1/8 of 7,000, which is 7/8 of 7,000. And that means I can afford it because 7/8 is less than 1. Okay, so I'm using some fraction math here, some fraction reasoning. Can I do 4 clay pots and 20 wooden statues? No, I can't because 4 clay pots is going to be 4 TL tests. That is my 7,000. Oh, wait, I'm so bad. Read. I mean, my answers don't change, but I did make a mistake. I ignored that this 7,000 is actually for 4 TL test and 15 radiocarbon tests. So, I mean, everything I just said is even more true because uh, like, let's imagine what I basically did for these first 2 questions was let's imagine that the radiocarbon tests were like a penny each. Then I've gone to the extreme where the TL test is most expensive. And even if it is most expensive, I can afford these tests. This last one, I'm actually curious about here because let's see, 20 wooden statues, wooden is going to be the radiocarbon because it's a plant. And 4 is the 4. And so this is actually going to, I'm not going to be able to afford this because I can only do 15 radiocarbon tests, not 20. And so this is going to be no. So I got that right. I got a little lucky on those first 2 though, because I made a mistake, and it's possible that that lack of attention to detail could have cost me those questions. I realized pretty quickly that they didn't, and that's nice. But truth be told, I was a little sloppy there. Okay, it happens. Learn and move on, right? But it's important to note that on that budget, right, in this budget, this 7,000 wasn't for 4 TL tests. It was for 4 TL tests and 15 of these carbon tests. And we don't know within that, right? Mathematically, I know that 7,000 equals 4T plus 15R, where T equals the price of a TL test and R equals the price of a radiocarbon test. Okay. But I'm not going to be able to solve for T and R in that situation. I can just test some extremes, right? Let's assume that the 4T tests cost 7,000, or we could, if we needed to, we didn't end up needing to. What if the 15R cost the 7,000 basically, and the TL tests were very cheap? I could play that testing extremes game that the GMAT loves so much. I didn't have to here, but I needed to be aware that I possibly should have, because that's really how I should have gotten those first 2 right. After I play that extreme game, the reasoning I used on those first 2 questions is good, but I definitely should have realized I need to go to that extreme first and consider that extreme first. So a little lucky on that one. Okay. Same situation here for each of the following of CACs and artifacts. Yes, if the cost of the pertinent techniques described can be shown. So exact same question, just with different situations now. So can I do 2 bone implements and 5 fired clay cups? I also want to point out here that it's important to realize that this column, and I like to do this up front, this column is the yes, definitely, and this column is the no, definitely, or the I don't know. And that's often the case. There's often a definite column and then a opposite definite or uncertain column. And it's important to note which one is which, right? I want to say if I definitely can afford these tests, or if I definitely can't, or it's uncertain. So can I afford to test 2 bones and 5 fired clay cups? Well, the bones, we use IRMS. And I don't know if I saw anything about IRMS on the budget. Oh, unlimited IRMS. I didn't notice that till just now. But again, that's what I said earlier. I don't need to get everything until I'm asked about it, right? I just knew that this was where the budget was. And I finally now see that, okay, IRMS is free. I can do all I want there. So who cares about the bones? Can I do 5 fired clay cups? And this is what I was just talking about, actually. I don't know if I can do 5 fired clay cups because the fired clay cups are going to use the TL tests. And I don't know if the TL tests are really expensive or really cheap within that $7,000 range. Um, if the TL tests are $1 each, then yeah, I can do 5 tests. If the TL tests are $2,000 each, they couldn't be 2,000 because 4 of them would be 8,000, but they could be 1,500 each, right? If they're 1,500 each, 4 of them would cost 6,000, and then I would have another 1,000 for the 15 tests here in the radiocarbon. But if if the TL tests are 1,500 each, I can't do 5 of them because that would be $7,500. And so since I don't know how much these clay tests really cost, I have to say no. I don't know if I can afford them or not. Could I do 7 wooden statues and 20 metal implements? Well, the wood used radiocarbon, right? That was plant matter. Yeah, radiocarbon dating. And this is going to be another interesting situation. So yes, I'm going to say no again because the 20 metal that uses the ICP-MS. So that's half of 7,000. The 7 wooden statues, that would be, 7 radiocarbon tests, but I don't know how much the radiocarbon test is. It could be on the high end or the low end. I just don't have enough information within this info to know. So I'm going to say no, I don't know if I can afford that. Can I do 15 wooden statues decorated with bone? Yes, because 15 wooden statues is part of this $7,000, and the bone uses as IRMS. I can do that as much as I want, so I'm going to say yes on there. I was wrong. What did I miss? 7 wooden statues and 20 metal implements. Okay. Let's see what I missed. I thought I wouldn't be able to do that. Or I thought I couldn't know. Oh, wait. Did I select no? No, I'm not sure what I selected. Yeah, I selected no, and the answer is yes. So 7 wooden statues and 20 metal implements. Hmm. I'm curious. Yeah. So radiocarbon is the wooden test. So I can afford 15 of them. Plus 40 ICP tests. The metal implements use the ICP test, right? Yes, ICP-MS. Okay, so I do believe that I was right here, that these 20 tests will be half of 7,000. So that leaves 3,500 left. Oh, this is classic. This is great. This is great. Okay. Yes. Haha. So test the extreme. If the TL tests are basically free, then 1,500 or 15 radiocarbon tests cost $7,000. All right, so here's where I made a mistake. If that's the most extreme. This is if these are the most extreme radiocarbon tests I can have. What do we know about 7 radiocarbon tests? Well, 7 is less than half of 15. Is less than 1/2 of 15. So the 7 tests cost less than $3,500. Yeah. In the most extreme version of this game, the 7 tests are still less than half of the cost. This is good. This is a good question. So this is exactly half of the $700 budget, and this by design has to be less than half. And so half plus less than half is less than 1, and so I can't afford this test. That was good. If this had been 8, I'd have to say I wouldn't know. Because if it were 8, it would be more than half. And so if the radiocarbon test were the expensive test, then 8 would be possibly more than half, right? Again, if they're really cheap, it could be well less than half. I just wouldn't know. But since it's 7, I can say that I can afford it. That's a good question. That's it. Okay, interesting. Is that really it? There's only 4 questions? I thought there were 6. Let me make sure I didn't miss something here. I think there are 2 questions that I didn't get that time. Let me pull these up. No, that's the same one. It's the same passage, but it's 2 different questions. Okay, so I guess these God, what am I trying to say? The sample questions that they give you for multi-source reasoning only have this one source. Okay, that's unfortunate because I was hoping to show you a few different ways to do this, but check out, we have some, like, we call them Twitch the GMAT, where we have Manhattan Prep instructors take full tests, full sections of tests. And so you can see them take a data insight section where they will have to deal with some multi-source reasoning. So take a look at those if you want to see more of people like me fighting through this stuff and probably missing questions there as well. All right, so among the Caxton artifacts is a wooden box containing both a bead, a clay bead, and some river sediment with clay and plants stuff. They told us all that, and then they asked about the bead. Okay, so what can we figure out about the fire clay bead? Dating. We can figure out how old it is. A range of dates since its placement in the box. Range of dates for its manufacture. Yeah, that makes more sense. I don't think I read A carefully enough. Yeah, we can figure out, but basically when it was made, right? Which of the following pieces of information would, on its own, provide the strongest evidence that the given artifact was actually produced on Caxna? Okay, well, first off, the only one that talked about location was the metal. Plant matter was age. Animal teeth and bones was diets and minerals. I could maybe use minerals and if it's a very specific kind of mineral, but I don't think that's going to be it. I think it's going to be something about the metal ores. These last 2 are age. So if I want to know if something was made on Caxna, it needs to be something made of metal. And it needs to use the ICP-MS test. Yeah, so D. Okay. So notice that for these easy questions, notice I actually didn't have to use any source but the first source really. And so sometimes that's true, right? Sometimes the questions you have, you might not actually need to use a source or use all of the sources. And again, on the test, the official test I use, I don't think I looked at the second source eventually. And that happens. Sometimes they've just thrown too much at you and you don't need it all. So that was how I worked through this question, this passage and these 6 questions on it. These 2 easy ones were certainly easier than the first 4. Notice GMAT-ness of it, right? The GMAT, I often say, is a trick question test, and that's maybe not the right phrase, but it's close enough to true that I think it's worth considering. And uh, even in a multi-source reasoning question, right, there's these moments where you can jump to an assumption and you actually need to consider fully the scenario and consider fully the possibilities and make as many inferences as you can before you jump to a conclusion. I jumped to a conclusion once. I just thought, 7, but how much does it cost? Is it really expensive or really cheap? I didn't get more specific. I should have considered, what if it's the most expensive? Then I can still afford 7 of them because 15 of them costs $7,000, right? And so 7 would be less than half. That was my mistake on this and that's something that would have happened in a non-multi-source reasoning question as well. It's just if you're moving and don't fully think of something, you're going to make a silly mistake. Yeah. So pull up the slide here. Again, check out our upcoming classes. You can take the first one for free. Love to see you out here. We do private tutoring. We have, again, a full host of resources on our web pages and on our YouTube page. Check it out. I hope to see you at some of the Foundations of Math. I hope to see you in some of our classes. But until I do, best of luck in your studies.